This is Until All Are Free. I'm your host, Preston Goff. My guest on the podcast today comes to us with more than 15 years of anti-trafficking experience, working on the front lines of what it looks like to actually combat this crime at scale around the world. He is the co-founder of the Exodus Road. Matt Parker is not a guest to listeners of the Until All Are Free podcast. In fact, he was the voice that I first featured in the very first episode of Until All Are Free back when we launched in April of 2020. Matt is an expert at helping us to understand the nature of human trafficking around the world, whether that's at a micro scale or macro and systemic large-scale trafficking, a topic which we talk about at length in today's episode. And while Matt's stories are absolutely extraordinary and the insights that he has to share are truly world-class, it's the invitation that he makes to the average person to find their role in the fight against human trafficking in their community, in their region, around the world that I think really sets him apart. And so let's do it. Let's bring Matt into the show. Let's welcome Matt Parker to the podcast. Well, I'm so excited to be sitting across from Matt Parker, the co-founder of the Exodus Road. Matt, it's been a long time since we first sat across from each other to record an Until All Are Free episode. And even we were remarking, this is quite the upgrade in this situation.
This is awesome.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I was thinking and preparing for this time and just considering, just to get started, how much the work has changed, how much life we've lived together and of course separately over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And how much the crime has changed, how much our programs have changed. I'm really excited to just dive in and bring a glimpse for people into what the issue looks like, but also give you a chance to do something that you do great, which is tell stories about what this work looks like as well.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. I wonder if we could start maybe with, for those who don't know, I mentioned it off the top. You're the co-founder of the Exodus Road. Tell me a little bit, just briefly, about who you are in relation to this work and what your role looks like today. Yeah,
it's a great place to begin. So I am the co-founder, as you said, really an investigator. When I think of myself, it's really difficult to think, even though my role has changed dramatically since the beginning in those founding days, it's really centered in investigations and finding children mostly that no one's looking for. Mm-hmm. That sentiment, that spark that started the whole thing was the truth that there's millions of slaves in the world. Many of them are children, and very few are looking for these people. And so as an investigator, partnering with law enforcement to find them has just been this central theme in my life for the last 15, 16 years. And overcoming the challenges that exist once you do find them has radically changed my life. It's altered the way I view this crime.
Yeah.
And my role today is still very much centered with that same animating energy of finding those no one's looking for. I'm now the chief investigations officer here at the Exodus Road, and my focus has shifted from kind of the smaller localized cases, which we still do here at the Exodus Road, and I'm taking the responsibility of developing larger transnational cases. So that's really what I do today. In addition to some fundraising and public speaking and awareness making, it's really these larger transnational cases.
That is one great spot to just kind of sit in. And I want to talk a little bit more about what that has looked like, because I think, that's one massive way that the organization has evolved over the last several years, and the crime has evolved in big ways. So when you talk about investigating huge, like transnational syndicate-based cases, what exactly does that look like?
Yeah. Well, the evolution came through learning, I think as so many evolutions happen. In working your mom and pop kind of brothels and localized cases, we discovered a few cases that were cross-border.
Yeah.
And we started to piece together the limitations local police have when you have a cross-border case. And this was years ago when we first started to see Colombian women trafficked into Bangkok.
Yeah. Wow.
That was probably the first thought
Yeah.
that we had of like, oh, well, we actually have staff in both countries.
Yeah.
Why can't we seem to get the intelligence from the survivor we were caring for in Colombia? Why can't we get that intelligence to Bangkok? And so that the Thai Royal Police can act. And the response was the bilateral agreement between those countries for information sharing was very lengthy, and there's a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
So, when you think about a police officer wanting to give intelligence to another country's government, they can't just pick up the phone and give that over.
Right.
There's this process.
Yeah.
Well, as a nonprofit, we don't
live by the bureaucratic standards in the same way.
We don't have those limitations.
Yeah.
And so it was the first thought or exposure to this idea of geographical arbitrage. This tactic that traffickers use to thrive in their criminal enterprise is to operate cross-border because they know law enforcement struggle to rapidly respond.
Yeah.
So it is a tactic traffickers are using to protect their criminal enterprise.
Yeah.
Is to operate cross-border. So for me, I'm like, whoa, this is a whole new layer to what kind of looked at the time like, commercial sex industry hiding human trafficking in their staff or in their ranks. This is a systematized, strategic approach.
Yeah, this isn't just opportunistic.
No.
It's preying on mass populations of vulnerable people.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, we got introduced to today one of the largest human trafficking syndicates in the world is scamming compounds in Myanmar.
Yeah.
And we were introduced to that quite organically as well. Started connecting the dots between our Brazilian country director and some Brazilian victims that were held in these compounds in Myanmar. Those are not close countries.
Yeah. How does that even, help us understand. How does a Brazilian even end up in Myanmar to begin with?
Yeah. This is a great example of a global transnational syndicate that uses human trafficking as one of its tactics to recruit and enslave workers and force them into criminality. So how does it happen? Well, like we would say 15 years ago, 20 years ago, human trafficking leveraged the modeling agency kind of scheme to say, hey, come be a model and you're beautiful and you're going to make a lot of money if you're a model, and let's have you take a fake job, get on a plane, go to a foreign country.
Yeah.
Guess
we'll
what?
Pay all of your travel.
Yeah. And there's this kind of glamorous
real easy
job offer.
Yeah.
It's a glamorous job offer. But those trafficking syndicates, of course, were kind of rumored. Some of the first human trafficking videos that I ever watched were about that type of case.
Yeah.
This is similar.
Yeah.
In that young IT professionals are doing job searches out of college.
Yeah.
And there are fake job ads recruiting young IT professionals to come and work in Asia.
High paying jobs.
Yeah, get rich quick kind of you won the lottery with this job opportunity. And a lot of young people, they get excited to travel the world. They feel like, man, I get to leave my hometown and go build a career with my skills. And these are college educated, young people.
Which is really unique in this sense, right?
It is. Yeah. Normally when you think of human trafficking, you think that traffickers are targeting vulnerable populations. Yeah. For all practical purposes, this is not a vulnerable population.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see traffickers leverage the promise of a job. That's not really new, but it seems new with this level of professionalism.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing them leverage intimacy. And I'll talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah.
But these young individuals, they take this job through a job placement company that's corrupt and a part of the syndicate. And that's the recruitment mechanism of the syndicate. And then these young people get on a plane, they fly to Bangkok or Cambodia, and then they're forced into a compound. It looks like a warehouse. We have lots of satellite imagery of these facilities, and they look like warehouses or a series of warehouses, and they're forced to scam mostly Americans. That's their primary target, out of their life savings.
Yeah.
Or that's the goal, is money.
And these are called pig butchering schemes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And pig butchering is old.
Yeah.
So they also used to be called boiler rooms where there's scamming happening.
Yeah.
What's new though is, scamming's been around for a long time.
Right.
And I was actually thinking the other day, when I was in my 20s, newly married, I got an email from the Ivory Coast.
Sure, the old Yahoo chainmail, Nigerian prince
yes,
stuff.
It's Nigerian prince, and they find themselves in this precarious situation where they have to somehow use your bank account to move money, and you're going to get a handsome reward. And I remember I don't know if any of these listeners would remember that.
Yeah,
but as a young person,
it's like an old trope now, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but I remember thinking, this is my lottery ticket.
Opportunity. Yeah.
I'm going to help this guy. And, it didn't take long to kind of realize it was fake, but there was a lot of people who did fall for that.
Yeah.
And the people who used to fall for those pig butchering schemes, they were doctors and lawyers. They weren't all uneducated people.
Yeah.
And so now what we're seeing with these scams is they're trafficking people into these compounds, and they're torturing them.
Yeah.
And they're physically beating them if they don't send fake text messages to various targets in the United States. And there's three tactics they're using. The largest one is to convince whoever they text that there's a crypto investment that's going to make them rich.
Right.
It's just like the Ivory Coast or the Nigerian concept, like, hey, get rich quick.
You put in a little bit of money and you're going to extract a lot.
And, this syndicate, the one I'm talking about in Myanmar, it's run by the Chinese mafia.
Yeah.
They've lured, through fake job placement ads, young IT professionals to come to Asia. They lose their passports. They're forced in these compounds. And these IT professionals are given a target list of American phone numbers.
Yeah.
And then on this side of the planet, we get this text.
Yeah.
That kind of
annoys us.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's like, oh, sorry, you have the wrong number.
Yeah.
But normally the texts are like, just say hi.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hi, John, or, wrong name. And they're wanting us to respond by saying, oh, you have the wrong number.
Yep.
And then they know, number one, okay, it's an active number.
Yep.
This is a real person that I'm talking to. And then they go one of three things. They somehow turn the conversation after building a relationship with you to the get rich quick crypto investment. And these mafia groups, they have very sophisticated fake investment platforms that look real.
Yeah, this is wild to me.
Yeah.
Because, the average person is like, well, wouldn't you see the red flags of investing the money? Like, where is that going? Like, why don't victims of this crypto scamming crime see the red flags? And it's because of how sophisticated the strategy really is.
Yeah, the ruse.
Yeah.
Individuals who are targeted in the United States, they start with a small amount, $50, $100. And the ruse is, hey, watch it grow, watch your money grow. And they'll give you a login to this fake investment platform, and they'll
show returns.
Yeah, they're showing returns, and it looks legitimate and it's convincing. What ends up happening is Americans empty their savings on the promise that, hey, you're going to get 10 times return on your investment. And once they bleed you dry, this is the pig butchering idea. Once you're totally out and you're ready to cash out, and you're like, hey, I need to get money back out. You never hear from these people again, and that money is gone.
Yeah.
And
it's already been gone.
Yeah.
It's just
right.
visible behind this hidden platform.
So it's similar to, they're used to, so there's that. There's the crypto. There's still romance schemes too. And that's an older one, that relationship promises from the Ivory Coast or these fake online intimacy propositions. It is a weird thing that our society is lonely.
Yeah.
To the point where we deeply want to believe that this person we've never met, who's using AI to generate fake images and create voice modulation to sound like a woman or to look like a woman, a beautiful model, that we fall in love with the fantasy of that.
Yeah.
And for a time, they generate what appears to be genuine intimacy. Like they know me, they care about me, they're asking me questions. The situation we're in our culture is such that AI agents and AI assistants are providing some amounts of intimacy to the lonely citizens who have access to it. And so this is similar.
Right.
It's not real. And then, there's actually TV shows about this now.
Yeah.
People who fall in love with the idea of someone, not really knowing it's a trafficked victim in a compound in Myanmar, forced to try to extort money out of you or get money out of you. The third thing, unfortunately, I hate to say this, that these compounds, these scamming compounds that are full of trafficked victims being forced into criminality, is they're sextorting our teenagers in the United States.
Yeah, and this has been eye-opening for me to hear about how the crime is moving in that direction, and really alarming.
It is, and it's a bit of a newer trend.
Yeah.
IJM did their intelligence unit trace back some sextortive engagement to an IP address in Myanmar, to a compound. And it was the first report that I had heard of it too, but now we're starting to hear reports from Nigeria sextorting teenagers as well from scamming compounds in Nigeria. And this crime type, it's the fastest growing, this idea of, criminal syndicates luring young IT professionals to an environment, to a geography that has low amount of law enforcement capability, high access to the internet and infrastructure. It's typically on a border. And so the UN put out a paper of the next basically 10 geographic areas that are ripe for this type of crime.
Yeah.
And in just the last few years, we've seen the scamming, compound, pig butchering crime type move from Asia to Latin America over to Africa. And so it's rapidly becoming the crime of choice.
Yeah.
It's super relevant for our listeners and for everyone to really understand. We are at this bizarre convergence in history of technology and access to children. And I do a lot of training with ICAC units in the United States and presentations around the world on CSAM and human trafficking and sextortion.
And ICAC is Internet Crimes Against Children.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that the public is slowly realizing is perpetrators have traded in the white van.
Yeah.
When I was a kid in the 80s, they were always like, don't take candy from a stranger.
Yeah.
Watch out for those white vans that are loitering around the children's playground, But perpetrators have traded in the white van for online fake profiles, and they're gaining access to our children through video game chat rooms and Facebook and social media, so that they gain access to our children while they're in our homes and in their rooms.
Yeah.
And we don't even know.
Yeah, I think that's, so often when I'm talking about human trafficking, right? So many people still have this, not wrong, but not complete portrait of what trafficking looks like, that it's so centered on like physical movement, child kidnapping, those kinds of elements.
Yeah.
And the wake-up call that should be like just blaring in the heads of parents is that physical location doesn't matter in any way. You can do everything to protect a child physically.
Right.
And still they might be submitted to the most nefarious and most fast-growing crime in the world today.
Right. Back to this idea of why did the Exodus Road start to investigate transnational crime? It is these things that came to us, and we were able to recover some survivors out of these compounds, meet them at the border with a team of social workers in partnership with border police to get them into their embassies. We were able to leverage Celebrite digital forensics capability to extract data off of some of the survivors' phones, which the police then could understand how these individuals were recruited, transported, held captive. There's images on those phones of their torture. They were trying to, the syndicate was not only forcing them to conduct these crimes and abusing them if they didn't meet a quota, they were also trying to ransom these individuals back to their families. So when you think about a business structure, and I mean, it's very complex. They have this state-of-the-art fake crypto investment platform that looks legitimate. They're selling intimacy. They're sextorting teenagers, and also they're ransoming the victim that they've trafficked to do those crimes back to their families. So regardless of what happens, they're going to make money.
Yeah.
The syndicate's going to make money. And the Exodus Road began receiving phone calls from these family members. Word kind of got out that we were front lines on the ground trying to support. I met with the general, the Thai Royal Police. I met with border security forces. I've been to Cambodia. I've met with law enforcement, basically with the same message of how can we help?
Right.
These governments are overwhelmed. It's very similar to Venezuela and their economic collapse. You see this wave of vulnerable people pour across a border.
Yeah, and this would have been, we're talking a decade ago, right?
Right. Yeah. But Colombia wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
This massive, border crossing of, who are these people? They don't have a visa. They don't have a passport. Those things were taken from them. And so from a Thai government perspective on the border of Myanmar, they're like, these are illegal immigrants. So we're going to arrest them all.
Right. Because on paper, that's true.
Because on paper, that's true. But we were advocating like, no, these are victims of a crime, and we need to give them aid and support and shelter and embassy support. And the Thai government, like Colombia, for a time, they were like, yeah, let's do that. But then it becomes overwhelming. They don't have the infrastructure, and it's very expensive to house 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And
that's the other thing. Like the scope and scale of how many people are stuck in these compounds is just hard to fathom. I hear about some of these compounds holding tens of thousands. Is that true?
The ILO estimated a couple years ago. They estimated over 150,000 victims in Myanmar alone.
Yeah,
I think it's more than that now. And you see, for our listeners, I'm not sure if they've seen the news on this, but it has made the news.
Yeah.
This is a major global issue that has drawn the attention of the United Nations, Interpol.
Yeah.
Most governments have been touched by this. Their citizens have been trafficked and targeted. Myanmar, back to some of my earlier comments, is uniquely perfect for a syndicate to operate in. The military junta regime that runs Myanmar is benefiting financially from this crime. And what we are finding is every forced criminality compound has a payment structure to corrupt protections, whether it be the judicial system of a corrupt government or law enforcement who are protecting it. And that is a theme. So if you were to extrapolate, how is this possible? Well, there's themes, and that is a big one of where they choose to operate these compounds. There's going to be a corrupt element, government being a part of the problem or enforcement being a part. But Myanmar is perfect. 150 plus thousand victims. When the rebel groups that operate in certain parts of Myanmar, who don't, they're not in support of this, these rebel groups will rise up, arm themselves, and overtake a compound. This has happened multiple times now. And unfortunately, that looks bad. I mean, it's war. I mean, there's killings that happen when this goes on. They liberate a compound.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have 1 to 5 to 10,000 displaced people that are stuck in Myanmar trying to get back into Thailand or cross the nearest border. Well, that's where the government, the Thai Royal Police or the border police, they're not equipped to handle 1,000 people crossing a border illegally. And so their go-to thought is, well, they're illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
But Thailand has come a long way from when we first kind of stumbled into this issue. And, I know that they've leveraged certain digital forensics capabilities to identify victims versus perpetrators. Because we don't think about it this way, but when you have a migration across a border, there will be a large portion of those individuals who are victims of that crime or survivors escaping, but hidden amongst their number are perpetrators.
Yeah.
And these perpetrators and syndicates, they operate on both sides of that border because they have recruitment transport mechanisms. So that's just one example of how the Exodus Road has evolved, how we are trying to advocate, deliver intelligence to, trustworthy governments who are trying to make a difference and support survivors in the process of repatriation. It's very complex, but it's super relevant to some of these trends we're seeing with human trafficking. It used to be in the United States, we would say, human trafficking may largely be within our borders. But in the next 5-10 years, we're going to see more and more crime happening from perpetrators outside of our borders, targeting our young people, targeting retirees in this country. And they're not in the United States.
Yeah.
They're not easy to find. They use all the tools available to them to remain anonymous, VPNs to hide their IP addresses, voice modulators, AI to change their look, and it's almost impossible to recover those funds that are lost.
All right, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll come back.
Sounds good.
Hey everyone, we'll get back to the interview in just a minute, but I wanted to take a pause and just let you know about a really amazing way that you can stay connected to the fight for freedom and the work that the Exodus Road is doing around the world. We have a messaging community that we call our Freedom News community. It's a group of people who receive texts from us, and it's updates from our teams about the work that they're doing in the fight against human trafficking. Every text is this little micro story of hope, of good news in the midst of something that can feel kind of dark. And if you're anything like me, I could definitely use more good news in my everyday. We'll give you real-time updates on anti-trafficking operations, survivor milestones, and then tell you ways that you can make a lasting difference. And it'll all come straight to your phone. The easiest way to sign up is to text FREEDOM, all one word, to 719-851-1493. All right, let's get back to the show. We're back. I want to take a bit of a hard left, and I want to give you a chance to kind of unpack this statement that is one that we've really began to cling to, which it's this idea of making human trafficking dangerous. And when I've used that to talk about what the Exodus Road does, I think it magnetizes people in a specific way because it's kind of a provocative statement. Mm-hmm. What do you mean, like, when you use that, what does that mean to you? When we make trafficking dangerous, and why is that even important?
Yeah, it's certainly a phrase I have used a lot, and it's central to, I guess, my perspective on why human trafficking is the problem that it is. Why do we have 50 million modern day slaves? When I first started being exposed to the issue, the International Labor Organization estimated that there were 27 million modern day slaves. So this was back in 2012, 2011, when that number was kind of circulating. And I remember feeling like, that's a massive number. That is so many people that we would be tripping over them on the sidewalk. Like, this is an overwhelming number. Why is that? And a large conclusion that I had come to after conducting some research and talking with law enforcement and other nonprofits, trying to understand how is it even possible that there's 27 million, we identified all of these deficiencies in the system, from victim identification to kind of a proactive policing evidence gathering, which is really rare globally. Most law enforcement do not do proactive investigations. It's reactive. There's no advocacy. So even if you found the victim, who is going to advocate for law enforcement action? And then you realize a lot of perpetrators and traffickers are bribing corrupt officials. And so
there isn't a lot of danger then.
There's no danger. Like, it's something you can get away with pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so this mantra of, we have to make this a dangerous crime to commit. Otherwise, it'll just continue and it'll get worse. And the nature of the crime itself is really the combination oftentimes of crime. So it's human smuggling plus false identification plus hiring a minor, and then there's the sexual services. There's, it's a multitude of crimes. Transport of a minor, sometimes kidnapping or
money laundering.
I mean, it's just like all these different things. And so when you approach a case of human trafficking, and oftentimes you don't arrive at the conclusion that it's human trafficking right away. It looks like something else first.
Yep.
And most law enforcement, it ends there. And those crimes have lesser charges and it's easier to prove. And, the whole system isn't really designed to fight human trafficking. So for us and for me, I'm like, if we want to impact human trafficking, then we have to make it a dangerous crime to commit. How are we going to do that? We have to shore up these deficiencies in the process: victim identification, effective evidence gathering, proactive investigations, advocacy of the victim, support through the judicial process. All of these kind of gaps that traffickers exploit, we've got to shore those up. And it is more dangerous today than it was when we first began. There's been a groundswell globally, lots of outcry from survivors, accountability to levels we've not seen before, beginning with the U.S. State Department and the TIP report being this metric by which we measure global response to the crime. We still have a long way to go, but if we can't make human trafficking a dangerous crime to commit, it's hard to believe that it's going to diminish or go away.
Yeah. My pathway into the Exodus Road and this work is probably a really similar common pathway that a lot of people have if they're even listening to this podcast, right? So this idea of, like, at the end of the day, the thing that pricked my heart first is I want to prevent child trafficking. I want to see children being freed, right? Yeah. And I think there's something so mature and good, and what I want to encourage the audience to hear and to care about is this idea of there's something so mature and good to saying our first aim is actually to make trafficking dangerous. And as a result of that, sure, these great things that we celebrate happen. Children are freed, women are freed, men are freed. All of that happens. But if you start with that as your aim, it actually leads you to different sets of actions that can actually not make trafficking dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, what are the actions that look different for an organization that says our first aim is to make trafficking dangerous?
So, if we rewind the tape to our kind of origin and our genesis, one of the talking points that was circling the nonprofit community was how do you make it dangerous? Because there were nonprofits that would find a child and then buy that child, put them in a vehicle, drive away,
Yeah.
and call that a rescue. And in some ways, that's not inaccurate. You've changed this child's life, you've freed them from their slavery, but there was no arrest, and so there was no penalty for the trafficker. And traffickers, in my experience, they build that into their business model. Mm-hmm. They're not really that upset. They can go buy another girl on the border for $45
with the money that you just gave them.
With the money you just gave them. So, while that activity was done out of a good heart and good intention, you didn't actually disrupt much. You saved that girl or boy, and that's not nothing, right? I mean, you've changed their life, but you also just created this vacuum, and now that trafficker is going to go fill that vacancy with another child, and in that way, it's very possible to fight human trafficking and not actually reduce trafficking or make trafficking a dangerous crime because there was no arrest. And so early days, we were committed to the arrest. And we certainly did not want to put money in the hands of a trafficker that would then empower them to continue their abuses.
Yeah.
And so that infiltrated everything we do in the investigative side of the house. We're very cognizant that the money we spend needs to be driving a case forward. Sometimes when we collect intelligence, it's a little bit harder to say, hey, we weren't really we don't really have a case yet. We're looking for a case. But when we find a child or a human trafficking syndicate, we're driving towards an arrest.
Yeah.
And of course we want to free the girls or boys that are being exploited, or men or women. But that was foundational to us of when we see nonprofits or talk about how we augment government action, we don't replace law enforcement. We don't replace the Department of Social Welfare. These are large, well-funded, oftentimes government agencies that may be underfunded or understaffed or not trained. Most agencies are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so because human trafficking is difficult to prove, it normally doesn't get the funding.
Yeah.
It normally doesn't get the attention that something like counterterrorism would, or drugs.
Right.
Those are crime types that are funded to a much greater degree.
Because they have a higher representation in statistical
right
perception, right?
And even here in the United States, when we talk about CSAM or sextortion or human trafficking, those crime types get less attention than homicide or terrorism, or mass shootings. I mean, of course, because one's a life and death situation and human trafficking isn't normally going to be a homicide. So for us, when we first began the work, it was like what we invest in needs to look like systemic change. And part of that is making human trafficking dangerous by driving forward an arrest.
Yeah. So
that the community is aware and that we have seen this. When we make an arrest, law enforcement normally want to put press around that because they're trying to get promoted. And we love that.
Sure. And it also makes the public aware.
It makes the public aware.
Hey.
Yes. And in a lot of communities, they drive by these establishments that are selling people, and they kind of have this thought, oh, that's not good for the community. And I have a suspicion that something nefarious is happening. But when they see it busted and like, oh man, human trafficking was happening next door to me or next door to my neighborhood. And it has a wave of awareness, which I think drives some prevention.
Yeah.
Where the communities are then informed. What I've loved seeing over the years in certain parts of India, when we have a success, they'll bulldoze the brothel.
It's wild.
In Indonesia, with slavery and fishing supply chains, they'll burn the ships.
Wow.
And it's these kind of dramatic statements that governments make to say, look,
that place will never be.
Yeah. Community, wake up.
Yeah.
We're not going to allow this. I love that stuff. And I think that kind of awareness has a massive preventative quality to it. But certainly for us, it was not enough to just buy a girl and call that a recovery. And also that's illegal. And so I think a lot of nonprofits, right when the Exodus Road was forming, that participated in that, they got arrested. Because you can't buy a child.
Yeah.
That looks like kidnapping, right? There's no parental consent. And if you're discovered doing that, it's not a sustainable.
The means don't justify the ends.
It's not sustainable. And most governments won't tolerate that kind of work. And so the other aspect to it that I would say we were really careful of, there is this cautionary tale of nonprofits that have come before us that had, I don't know if this is the right word or phrase, kind of had a cowboy approach, meaning they operated in this silo with no law enforcement backing, with no government registration. And so we began to see nonprofits kind of swoop in and do a raid or free children, and then they'd leave. And those children would be re-trafficked. The case would be thrown out of court. The perpetrators walked free. And you're like, look, the impact was not there, but they would leverage that event as like a press moment.
Yeah, right.
And it was really not a well thought out strategy. It was not collaborative with local government, law enforcement. And I get it. Some law enforcement agencies around the world have corrupt actors within them, and it's not easy to do the hard work of building relationships over a long period of time with trusted officials to help shape their communities and shape their countries and nations. But that is the important hard work.
Yeah.
And so I think still today, you have lots of nonprofits kind of pop up to fight human trafficking, and a lot of them are former military, former intelligence agents for the U.S. or beyond, and they're used to operating at very high levels of military action or policing. But if we're not careful with our approach and our strategies, there is a temptation to be a cowboy.
Yeah, to run faster than the systems around.
Yeah, and a lot of these kind of newer nonprofits, they don't last, and partly because it's hard. Regardless if you're a sniper or a special forces guy, that doesn't mean you're a great fundraiser.
Yeah.
You have to raise funding in the nonprofit world, and you have to develop a sustainable program with measures and metrics, and you have to bring a whole community along with you in a transparent way, and there will be trouble that you have to navigate. And a lot of folks don't realize that starting and running a nonprofit is not simple.
Yeah.
There's actual reporting and accounting and audits.
Oh, and by the way, the groups that you're disrupting, they really don't like it when you do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. So
all those things.
And, back to the concept of making human trafficking dangerous, for me, the arrest of the perpetrator is so critically important, and it's the hardest thing. because you're not just identifying a victim and mobilizing, revenue or mobilizing support for him or her. It is mapping the syndicate, understanding how they were recruited, transported, and held against their will, and how can we arrest those actors.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, I'm not really sure we've done very much to fight trafficking.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked kind of at high levels about what the issue looks like. Now I want you to, if you would, take us into a few cases that come to mind, or a recent case that comes to mind. Give us a glimpse of what this issue can look like as you sit in the seat of an investigator.
Yeah. I think probably the majority of listeners, when we think about human trafficking, it kind of looks like the commercial red light district. And now we've hopefully broadened their thinking that it's sextortion and it's scamming compounds, and it actually is much larger. Mm-hmm. But there's a case, it's an active case for us that we've delivered to a prosecutor in Latin America, and I'll be careful with locations and some of the details. But, this isn't a commercial red light district. This is a remote town that's not easy to get to.
Yeah.
So imagine a jungle with a population in a small town.
Mm-hmm. It's Montrose, Colorado, but it's in Latin America.
That's right. That's it. And these types of towns have local policing, right? They're not normally going to have a federal presence of any kind. It's just local police. And so those are the easiest to corrupt or pay off. And so if you're a criminal, you may have grown up with these police officers. I've been in deep cover with traffickers who are protected by high school friends or elementary school friends that ended up becoming police officers. And these are small towns. And so everybody knows everybody. Yeah. And everybody knows
what's happening,
where to get the drugs and where to get the kids and where to get the, whatever the illicit thing is. And our team went undercover and befriended this guy. And very quickly, he's showing us a portfolio of children on his phone. And this is kind of common in Latin America, where traffickers keep those portfolios on their phones. In Asia, you don't see that as often as you see in Latin America. But he's showing us, children 10, 11, 12, really, really young. And this case, we were able to capture audio and video of him offering his children, offering his CSAM. This was, I referred to this earlier, he offered us to direct our own CSAM film. Mm-hmm. And while we were with him, he's bragging that he supplies children to high-ranking officials that are in government. He's taking phone calls and sending photos of children, texting them to the people he's talking to while we're there. So this is, in my opinion, a really great example of kind of old school trafficking where children are being sold for sexual services. They're also being sold for CSAM, and they're being protected by local corrupt police.
Yeah.
And so you have to have, it's harder, this case, because it's not a commercial red light district. There's not kind of the international appeal of tourism. This is a remote kind of environment that's easy to corrupt and protect. The prosecutor that is working this case rotated. So this is the other thing a lot of people don't understand. Police rotate. They get promoted. Yeah. One of the oldest counter-corruption tactics governments have is to rotate.
Yeah.
The problem with that is all those cases that they were working often are just dropped. They're often not picked back up by the new kid on the block who takes that position. Even in the United States, our law enforcement rotate by discipline. So you may develop an expertise and spend 4 years fighting financial crimes to then be rotated into a human trafficking unit, and you have no experience in human trafficking.
Yeah.
And then in 4 years, you're going to rotate out to homicide. You're going to rotate out to vice. And so we lose globally a type of specialty in law enforcement in the attempt to reduce corruption.
Yeah.
So in this case, we had everything you could ever want from an evidence perspective, that this man is trafficking children in real time, highly corrupt. There's government officials involved, and the prosecutor rotated. And so one of the things that people don't realize, law enforcement and prosecutors have an overwhelming caseload.
Yeah.
Overwhelming. So what cases make it to the top?
Probably the ones that are the easiest to prove.
That.
Or the ones that will secure them their next promotion.
And that. and cases like homicide.
Okay.
Cases where
the public's eye is
yes,
on it.
If we're doing anything in this town, we're investigating murders. And people don't realize this in the United States. We have a very low success rate in investigating homicides in the United States.
Really?
I've heard it's as low as 50%. We only solve 50% of homicides. And I've had some police officers say, yeah, but that statistic is skewed because of X, Y, and Z. All I know is homicides they get a lot of attention, and they're not always easy to solve.
Yeah.
Let alone
human trafficking,
which is really complex and, isn't maybe in these small remote villages or border towns where the really young children are bought and sold. The policing force, it's a small police force.
Yeah.
And if they're not corrupt, they're in charge of everything from A to Z.
Yeah.
And
they may be able to successfully handle a handful of cases a year.
Well, and because globally law enforcement are reactive and not proactive, they're waiting for someone to report the crime.
Yep.
They're not going out into the community in an undercover capacity looking for crime. They're waiting to respond to someone who reports it. Well, depending on the levels of corruption and the amount of force, fraud, or coercion, no one's going to report it.
Right.
If these kids are orphans, who's looking for them?
Right.
If the parents are incredibly poor and were complicit, who's going to report it? Good men and women aren't hanging out where these kids are bought and sold.
Yeah.
And so without proactive investigation, without advocacy, without a community rising up and saying, hey, something's going on in this building or in this storefront, and it is a very American thing to report a crime. Most cultures globally, that is not a part of the culture.
We need a lot more Karens around the world.
We do. I was in Europe meeting with a crimes against children officer. That was her specialty. And she said, Matt, you have to understand, here in Europe, people, we don't meddle in other people's business. We're not going to report. We're not telling on each other in our culture. That's an American thing. And I guess I hadn't really realized that reporting a crime and taking that responsibility is kind of uniquely American. So just with that bit of information, you can see why human trafficking is not dangerous, right?
Well, and why this guy is so blatantly able, it sounds to me like his behavior is very blatant in that he feels like there is no recourse for my actions.
Right. There's another case, a much larger case in Asia that we've been working for years now. And that ego that traffickers get when they feel untouchable, it's very useful to us.
Yeah.
This case is a little different because it's larger and it's gotten more attention, and it's multinational. And so, it's more interesting case for a group like Interpol versus an extremely localized case that it maybe caters to some foreigners, but it's mostly local.
Yeah.
So I think, that case is ongoing. And I think that the thing about investigative work and advocacy is how long it takes.
Yeah.
It is the most maddening thing.
So on that, at this point, where is that case and what is the, ideal kind of follow through or timeline?
Yeah. So here at the Exodus Road, our country directors will drive that case forward with the new prosecutor. And that case has been redelivered. And when the prosecutor can get to it, they will likely reach back out to us and want us to refresh the intel.
Okay.
And this is something that most people don't understand either. Intelligence has an expiration to it.
Yeah.
Because, and this is, I'm sad to say this, most law enforcement globally, they want to catch the perpetrator, the trafficker, in the act.
Yeah.
So even if we had, rock solid case, all the intel you'd ever want, but we collected it 3 months ago, they're going to want to see it recollected today.
Yeah.
And their thought behind it, I think, is, are the same players still?
Yeah.
Is this a one-time thing? Is this truly a syndicate? How embedded are they in the community? Or is this really not a crime we can pursue? Law enforcement and prosecutors don't want to take a case they can't win.
Yeah, sure.
And so
they have to be choosy.
They
right?
have to be choosy.
Yeah.
And, any case they take is probably going to be a year or 2 years long of a judicial process.
Yeah.
From victim interrogation, the arrest, of course, temporary housing and shelter, who's going to jail, and are they going to post bail? I mean, it's a very long and very expensive process. And so if it doesn't end in a positive conclusion, it's not going to help them get promoted. It's going to be a bad mark on their record. And it opens them up in some countries to countersuits. The most disheartening thing is those children are being abused every day while we're waiting for justice, while we're waiting for a new prosecutor to get their legs underneath them and address and get to that case, even to ask us to refresh it. We're happy to refresh it, but it's kind of a hurry up and wait while we continue to advocate for that case. And we have lots of cases like that.
Yeah.
We have a case progression model where we don't work one case at a time. We're working lots of cases, and they're at different phases of law enforcement response. The prosecution, judicial system is slow. I do have hope that case will come to a resolution soon, hopefully in the next year.
There may be someone listening that is like, listen, I get it. I get make the arrest, all that. But the harsh question is how can you live with knowing that child is experiencing that? And why don't you just go get them? Yeah. What do you say to that?
So I would say any opportunity we can retrieve a child and not destroy the case, we do. So there's several cases actually recently where our investigators in Latin America have been asked to support a case where children were being exploited, and we were able to, and I can't get into too much detail here because I don't want to reveal tactics, we were able to extract those children and still pursue an arrest. Mm-hmm. And so that case is ongoing. Anytime we can do that, we will do that. Yeah. And if there's ever a case per our policy and our investigative manual, anytime a child is facing imminent harm, we intervene. Yeah. It is one of the most difficult things I've ever faced. Yeah. To leave a child in an exploitive situation while I go try to mobilize law enforcement. The thing that I hold is kind of back to your original statement, is how are we making trafficking dangerous? In that value, it is our true north in those moments. And I'll be honest with you, we have a command structure with our investigative forces for this reason. Mm-hmm. When we send undercover investigators into the world to find and free victims of trafficking, there are moments when their humanity is screaming at them. Yeah. And they make calls to what we call command, whoever's over the mission, to approve.
Can't we just...
Yeah, because when you're in it and your heart's bleeding and you're suffering trauma on behalf of a child you're trying to free, you need an outside perspective sometimes. Yeah. But we have some caveats there that trump the arrest, and that one of them is if the victim is is facing physical harm,
imminent danger,
then we intervene. But we don't intervene on our own. We call law enforcement for support. And but that rule, that guiding principle, has come from things I've observed and seen. For example, I've seen young women drugged, and then without their capacity to walk, be shoved into a vehicle.
Yeah.
And so when we're undercover, we don't break cover. We don't want, we never break cover. So we're not raising our hand at any point and saying, "Hey, I'm here to rescue you and arrest the bad guy." Like that's not our MO. But it's from sitting with the responsibility we have to protect that has guided our investigative practices.
I know there's an element too. I'm just sitting here thinking about, like, to make trafficking dangerous is to sharpen the systems that are in place to be able to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
In some ways, right?
Yeah.
So there's this idea too that, like, by continuing to turn back and relentlessly committing to saying, nope, we're going to wait for law enforcement. Nope, we're going to ensure that they are sharpened to the ability to build this case effectively so that the next time they need us less and less is a beautiful thing. And it's something that, I say this from my posture, like as a nonprofit leader and on staff of the Exodus Road, this is what you want to. This is what you want to see in this work that you support. Like I know that it has led us down paths towards agonizing decisions and agonizing patience, but there's such a goodness to it.
I heard this story years ago that there was a slum community with a population, and there was some social workers, social welfare people kind of befriending this population and had made friends with this kind of elderly woman who was living in a tent in the slum community. And they were kind of in a foreign country living on the garbage heap, but they had power. They had some electricity in this slum community. And as this social worker was engaging with this woman, they had built this friendship, and the day came around where this woman said, "Hey, I don't have enough money to pay the power bill, and they're going to cut my power off. Can I have $5 or whatever the amount was?" And the social worker's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't have the money to give you." And she's like, "Well, you're my friend. What do you mean you don't have the money? I'm poor. I'm living here. You're a helper.
Yeah.
I need the money. They're going to turn my power off." And the social worker said, "Look, I don't have the money to give you, but if you like, I'll come and sit with you in the darkness. So you don't have to be alone." And this woman said, "You would? You would come with me and be with me?" And I love that story because I have sat in the darkness with so many young boys and girls that we could not rescue. And in those moments, and I think as a human intelligence investigator, it's like, look, what kind of change can I really affect? I mean, I have to find this victim. I have to gather intelligence on their trafficking situation, and then I have to convince maybe a corrupt law enforcement agency that this case matters more than the 100 other cases they're working. And what odds do I really have of freeing this child and arresting that guy? They're slim. It impacts our behavior to such a human level that when we sit with these individuals in their moment of slavery and exploitation, doing all that we can and all that we know how to free them, we know the odds are low. And so we speak life into them. And I've encouraged young boys and girls to escape. I've tried to speak love and kindness and empowerment into this moment where I'm trying everything I know how, but I recognize the odds are low. And I don't know how to measure that, but there is something so important that we took it upon ourselves to go down dark alleys on behalf of a child, to sit with them, to try to map their slavery, to try to advocate for their freedom, and knowing if that's not possible, we see you and you're loved and you're valuable. And I have had girls escape, which I'm so proud of them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to ask girls or boys when I'm with them in these moments, I always ask this. I'm like, what is your dream? And for a moment, they transport to some future version of themselves, some hopeful place. And they tell me the same things that all children would say. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a tour guide. I want to speak English.
Travel the world.
I want to be a doctor, And it's really important to me in that moment of asking them their dream. And for this temporal moment, they transport into some future version of themselves. And I say, I believe you can do it. I can't tell you how many children have looked at me and said, no one has ever said they believe in me. There's something about you that's different. And I have to be a little careful there to not show my hand too revealing. But there's that moment of sitting in the darkness with someone before they're free, not knowing if we can free them. That is so hard. And then we leave and we go meet with the police and we submit the case and we advocate and we hope and we go and we gather more intel if we need to and we drive. And sometimes police will act and sometimes they won't.
I'm struck by, what you just described, this idea of sitting in the darkness with someone is well within reach for the average person without even being in the investigative environment. Yeah. I think, candidly, there's this thing that happens when people listen to Matt Parker speak, and it's I got to do something. You have that effect. And I think part of this issue has that effect too, right? Like it awakens something in the average person where they're like, I need to do something. Mm-hmm. What is it that the average person, what is the role of the average person in this fight today? Because I think the world can end trafficking without hundreds of thousands of investigators showing up. Mm-hmm. So what is the average person's role? And that's how I want to close.
I believe that there is an action to be taken. And that action could look like so many different things. For me, I was so bothered by the realities of human trafficking, I met with the police. I was in a unique position to do that. Other people listening to this podcast, they have an action to take. It could be really taking this message of what human trafficking is to their families and to their communities, and that's easy. That is a kind of a low-hanging fruit action in my mind. It's not really risky. You're not risking your life to do that.
Super high ROI, though.
Super high. And the Exodus Road has influence.org. I love pointing to that because it is a digital safety training course for parents of teenagers and for teenagers. And it's about how to remain safe online. And we talked about this earlier, that perpetrators have exchanged the white van for the digital world and the digital space. And most of our teenagers have phones. And we as adults have a responsibility to keep our teens safe. As a father, I have 3 teenagers. It is my job to do my best to understand not my world, the world of the 80s, to understand their world so that I can guide them into a sense of safety.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, man, I want to do something, that is something you can do that is very easy to engage with, and then share that information with your family, with your community. There's other things that would be really helpful. Certainly awareness, education, leveraging platforms. Some people listening to this may, I don't know, be Instagram famous or something, and you could leverage your fame. You could leverage your talent and your skills. If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, or whatever your skills are, those can be leveraged in so many different ways. Certainly, and I think in the nonprofit space, we can't do what we do without donors.
Sure, yeah.
It's a weird thing to let that be your only engagement because it's so easy. And certainly I invite that engagement. We need the revenue to go rescue those trapped in slavery and prevent slavery. But I would say don't let it end there.
Yeah. Because you have a sphere of influence that you can help to protect and shape.
Right. I oftentimes talk about who these perpetrators are. Mm-hmm. And we have this habit, I guess, of demonizing people because it keeps our world nice and clean and tidy, like this, dichotomistic worldview of I'm good and they're bad.
Yeah.
But the truth is, all of the men that I sit with and befriend for intelligence reasons, they're the most lonely people in the world. And a lot of people are desperate. And be a good friend. Mm-hmm. Be a good neighbor.
Yeah. Because loneliness can actually beget the depravity of those actions.
The whole system of criminality is built on a sea of desperate people. Mm. And I certainly want listeners to be educated and to find in their worlds ways that they can act. Certainly joining with the Exodus Road could be a big part of that. But there are things that I don't have insights into that the world needs for you to do. And to sit with that and to take steps forward is really important. You don't actually have to have the full strategic plan before you start taking steps towards those who are suffering or taking steps towards education and protection. You can take baby steps. That's okay. Just don't sit still. I think if you sit still, it moves to the back burner and your world will be consumed by something else.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, man, that Matt Parker guy, he's inspired me to do something, then act.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Act.
Yeah. Don't delay the next right step.
Yeah.
In anticipation for the perfect step.
Right.
Yeah. I
used to say this, when we started the Exodus Road, we didn't know what we were doing. And I had people in my life tell me that. People.
God bless them.
They're like, Matt, you shouldn't be doing this. You don't know what you're doing. I'm like, I know I don't know what I'm doing. But if no one does any, bring me the person who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, help. Yeah.
I'm just as soon as I find that guy who knows what they're doing, then I'll take a back seat. But until that day, I'm advocating for these kids.
Let me say thank you to Matt for joining us on Until All Are Free on this episode. And this has been Until All Are Free. I'm your host, Preston Goff. This podcast is a production of the Exodus Road, a global anti-trafficking nonprofit envisioning a world where no human is ever bought, sold, or exploited. If you want to learn more about the work that we're doing or support it directly, you can do so at theexodusroad.com. If this podcast moved something in you, I invite you to share it with someone else. You can follow us wherever you're listening to this podcast, but I also want to let you know that we've launched new Until All Are Free social channels on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find us by just searching Until All Are Free podcast. New episodes drop every other Friday. Until next time, thanks for listening.